What's happening, folks? Mr. Rouge again, and today what we're talking about are the levels of organization that we find in living things, okay? So biology is very, very organized. Let me show you what I mean by that. So biology kind of reminds me of these Russian dolls, and if we take a look at one, we'll see one section, but inside, if we look at what it's made up of several smaller parts. And if we look at that, it's made up of more smaller parts. And we can see that they all fit together perfectly. But standing alone, each is its own subject and its own topic, okay? That's kind of what I think about in biology. So let's go over what the levels actually are. The first level of organization is the atomic level. In this level, we look at atoms, kind of like this one right here, okay? Now, in biology, there's a handful of atoms that we specifically look at. They're carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. To help you remember what these are, we simply refer to those elements or those atoms as schnapps. Okay? Schnapps should help you remember the most important elements and atoms that make up life. Now, when we take those elements and we combine them together, they make biological molecules, biomolecules. They're molecules essential for all life. Every living thing has these biological molecules. And if we were to look at each of these independent atoms, each of these little atoms that's making this sugar molecule, that would be the carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen found in schnapps, okay? So here's what the biological molecules are. They're carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Lipids is a fancy word for fats. Okay? So if I read these off to you again, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, those three words might sound a little familiar to you because that's what we typically find on the back of a food label. Okay? That's what a food label is telling us. Now, why would we have carbohydrates, fats, and proteins in our food? Well, it's because our food is actually other life. Whether it's bread or a piece of meat, that food came from a living organism or once was a living organism, okay? Nucleic acids, that's DNA, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the semester, okay? Now, when we take those four biomolecules, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and nucleic acids, they give us our next level of organization, that's organelles, okay? What organelles are, if you were to look inside of a cell, you're gonna see a lot of different structures in there, a lot of little machineries that are doing all the work for the cell. All those little machines, those are called organelles, and that word literally translates to tiny organs. Okay, just like how you have organs inside of you, every one of your cells has tiny organs or organelles. What are all those organelles made out of? Carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and nucleic acids, okay? Now, when we take a bunch of organelles and we put them together and they start working together, that gives us our next level, which is the cell. And the cell is the basic unit of all life. The cell is anything that's living is made up of at least one or more cells, okay? So you are made up of trillions of cells. However, bacteria, which is also living, is only made up of one cell. Now, if I were to look at your body or someone's body, there's different cell types. So I would have heart cells, I would have nerve cells, muscle cells, and there's actually about 200 different cell types in total, okay? So if I take a group of cells that start to function together, that start working together, that gives us our next level, which are tissues, okay? Tissues are made up of similar cells functioning together. So for example, if I get a bunch of heart cells working together, that gives me heart tissue or cardiac tissue. If I take a bunch of nerve cells working together, that gives me nervous tissue. If I look at muscle cells working together, that gives me muscle tissue, okay? Now, if I take a group of similar tissues working together, that gives me an organ. Organs are similar tissues working together. So if I take a bunch of cardiac tissue, that will give me a heart. If I take a bunch of nervous tissue, that might give me a brain or maybe the spinal cord. Muscle tissue working together, that'll give me a muscle. Okay? Now if I take a bunch of organs, those organs are working together for a common purpose, that gives me an organ system. Okay? So the organ system is made up of different organs. If I take a look at your circulatory system or your cardiovascular system, that's your heart, but I would also be looking at your veins and arteries. Those are blood vessels that help your heart transport the blood and oxygen. Okay? If I'm looking at your nervous system, not only would I look at your brain, but I would also look at your spinal cord. Okay? Now, if I take a bunch of organ systems, in the human body there's 11. If I take all 11 organ systems, that gives me an organism. Okay, that's all systems working together to maintain a balance, to maintain this word right here, homeostasis. Okay, to keep everything just right. Okay, so this is the only page of notes. Go ahead and put this on pause and make sure you get all this into your notebook. Sketch quick little diagrams if you can. And let's go over this one more time. So we have atoms. Atoms come together to form biological molecules. Biological molecules come together to form organelles, which are found inside of cells. Let me go ahead and backtrack real quick. These atoms, that would be schnapps. Okay. These biological molecules, that would be the carbs, the fats, the proteins, and the nucleic acids. Those make organelles, which are found inside of cells. Those are our tiny organs because they're inside of the cell. Those tiny organs form a cell. Similar cell types working together gives you a tissue. Similar tissues working together gives you an organ. Similar organs working together gives you an organ system. And lastly, all 11 organ systems gives you an organism. Okay? All right, let's have a little quiz on this. Please feel free to use your notes, but I'm going to show you a picture. I'm going to show you the definition, and you tell me what level of organization that falls under. Okay? First one, the building blocks of all matter. Specifically referring to carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus. That level would be the atomic level, or atoms. Okay? Next, we go to what are similar cells functioning together? Okay? So if I take a bunch of similar cells working together, what level would that consist of? Or what level would this be under? That would be tissues. Next, identify this level of organization. Tiny organs inside of cells. The tiny structures inside of a cell. That would be organelles. All organ systems working together to maintain homeostasis. Identify this level. That would be organism, or the organismal level. Okay? Molecules essential for life. Specifically, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and nucleic acids. That would be biological molecules. The basic unit of all life. That would be cells. Similar organs functioning together. So for example, this heart is going to have to work with these veins and these arteries. So similar organs, that would be organ systems. And similar tissues functioning together. So if I get multiple tissues, that would give me organs. All right, folks, that is it for today, and I will catch you all next time. Adios.